You know that feeling when you finish a run, check your settlement, and instead of immediately calculating how much goes to fuel, truck payment, and insurance, you actually have money left over. Like real money. Not, I can afford ramen this week money. I'm talking about the kind of money that makes you sit back in that cab and think, maybe this is actually working. There's a specific milestone where that shift happens. And it's not what most people in trucking think. Most people will tell you that you need to own a fleet to feel financially free in this industry. Or that six figures is impossible unless you're running 70 hours a week and sacrificing everything. But here's what they're missing. There's a much smaller milestone that completely transforms your relationship with trucking and with money. And once you hit it, everything changes. That milestone is your first $100,000 gross trucking year. My name is your name, and I spend way too much time thinking about trucking finances, the psychology of owner-operators, and why some drivers build real wealth while others stay trapped behind the wheel for 30 years with nothing to show for it. If you want to understand the real mechanics behind building wealth in this industry, instead of just hoping the next load pays better, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up changing how you see your trucking income. Now, before we talk about why $100,000 changes everything, let me ask you something. When you think about making it in trucking, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture some guy with a 10-truck fleet who started with connections and capital you'll never have. Or maybe you picture yourself grinding away, mile after mile, load after load, slowly bleeding money on repairs and fuel while brokers take their cut off the top. The truth is, trucking wealth doesn't work the way most drivers think it does. Here's what actually happens. There are certain financial thresholds in this industry that act like invisible barriers. Cross them, and the rules of the game completely change. $100,000 gross is the first major threshold that separates drivers who will build real wealth from drivers who will spend their entire career living load to load. And the crazy part? Most drivers have no idea this threshold even exists or what crossing it actually does to your brain. Think about it this way. If you've ever tried to get a loaded 53-footer moving from a dead stop, you know that getting it rolling is the hardest part. You're burning fuel, grinding gears, barely moving, and wondering if the brakes are still on. But once you hit highway speed, something changes. The engine stops screaming. The truck finds its rhythm. And suddenly you're covering ground almost effortlessly. Your first $100,000 trucking year is that moment the truck finally gets moving. Everything before it feels like you're fighting the weight of the load. Everything after it feels like the road is working with you. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the part that will probably surprise you. The difference isn't just mathematical. It's not simply that you're grossing more per mile or that your load board options are better. The real shift happens in your brain. When you're scratching and clawing for every load below that threshold, your brain operates in what psychologists call survival mode. Every decision gets filtered through fear and scarcity. You take the cheap load because you can't afford to sit. You stay with the bad dispatcher because leaving feels too risky. You say yes to freight you hate because you need the cash today. This isn't about being irresponsible. When you're in survival mode, your brain literally cannot think about growth. It's like trying to plan your retirement while you're deciding which bill to pay this week. But something remarkable happens when you cross that $100,000 mark. Suddenly your brain has breathing room. Instead of asking, how do I cover this week's fuel? You start asking, how do I scale this? Instead of reacting to whatever load the broker throws at you, you start being strategic about which freight you accept, which lanes you run, and which relationships are actually worth building. Here's where the math starts getting exciting. Let's say you're running as an owner-operator clearing $4,000 a week gross. Getting to your first $100,000 gross takes roughly 25 weeks of consistent running. That's 6 months of discipline, sacrifice, missed weekends, and white-knuckling it through slow freight markets. It's not easy. Most drivers either quit or go back to company driving somewhere along the way. But here's the part that changes everything. Once you've done it once, your second $100,000 year doesn't take the same effort because now you know which lanes pay. You know which brokers are worth answering. You know how to negotiate rate confirmations instead of just accepting the first number. You know your cost per mile down to the penny. You did the same amount of work, but you shaved months off the timeline because you now have knowledge, relationships, and systems working alongside your hours. By the time you're chasing your third $100,000 year, the game has changed completely. Your dispatcher knows you deliver. Your top brokers call you directly. You're not refreshing a load board at 2 a.m. hoping something good posts. Now let's talk about what most drivers completely miss, and it might be the most important thing in this entire video. When you gross $100,000 in a single trucking year, you've accomplished something far more valuable than just a number on a settlement sheet. You've rewired your brain and proven something to yourself that changes every decision you make going forward. Think about what it actually takes to gross $100,000 as an owner-operator. You had to track your cost per mile religiously. You had to say no to cheap freight even when sitting felt unbearable. You had to resist the urge to blow your cash on a shiny new truck you couldn't afford. Most importantly, you had to do all of this consistently, week after week, through breakdowns, weather, slow markets, and brokers who treated you like a commodity. And here's the thing. You proved to yourself that you can run this like a business instead of just a job. That identity shift is massive. Before you hit that milestone, every unexpected expense feels like a catastrophe. Truck goes down? That's a disaster. Rate drops for 2 weeks? That's a crisis. But after you've crossed $100,000 gross, these same events become problems you solve instead of emergencies that break you. Truck needs a repair? You've got the reserves. Rates drop? You know how to find better freight. A broker tries to cut your rate at the last minute? You know your worth and you walk away. This is what experienced operators mean when they say running scared is the most expensive way to truck. When you're desperate for every load, everybody knows it. Brokers smell it. They lowball you because they can. But when you're operating from a position of strength, when you've proven to yourself and the market that you can produce, everything about how you negotiate changes. You start asking for the rate you deserve because you know your numbers. You push back on low offers because you're not afraid to sit a day for the right load. You start building direct shipper relationships because you finally have the confidence and track record to walk through that door. And here's the crazy part. Most of the time, you don't even need to walk away. Just knowing you can changes your entire energy on that phone call. Brokers and shippers respond to confidence. They give better freight to drivers who don't sound desperate. But here's where most drivers blow it completely. And I see this all the time. They have their first big year, feel that psychological shift, and immediately go buy a second truck they're not ready to manage. Or they upgrade to a brand new Kenworth because they feel they've earned it. Or they take the summer off and come back to a dead market with no cash reserves. Don't do this. That first $100,000 year is not a reward. It's the foundation. It's the proof of concept. It's the seed that grows into a fleet, financial independence, and eventually a business you can sell or hand down if you're patient enough to let it compound instead of spending it the moment it arrives. And this will probably make you laugh or want to throw your phone across the cab, depending on where you're sitting financially right now. The average owner-operator spends more money on their truck payment and upgrades over a career than it would take to achieve complete financial independence. Think about that. Between unnecessary truck upgrades, chrome accessories, the brand new trailer they financed instead of buying used, the payments on a truck that's depreciating faster than it's generating profit. Most owner-operators are spending $3,000 to $5,000 a month just to look like they're doing well. Over a 20-year career, that's easily $500,000 or more that went into looking successful instead of becoming successful. Meanwhile, they're telling their wife they can't afford to save anything this month. Here's the beautiful irony. The operator running the paid-off 2018 Pete with 800,000 miles on it is probably sleeping better than the guy with the 2025 showroom truck and a $3,200 monthly payment staring him down every time freight gets slow. That truck payment might make you feel successful, but it's quietly keeping you from becoming successful. And once you've had your first $100,000 year, you start to see this clearly. You stop asking, "Can I afford the payment?" and start asking, "What is this actually costing me an opportunity?" That $60,000 truck upgrade isn't just $60,000. It's $60,000 that could have been a down payment on a rental property, or a second paid-off truck generating income without debt strangling it, or an investment account quietly compounding while you run. This mindset shift extends to every major financial decision you make in your trucking business. Which lanes you run, which freight you accept, whether you add a truck or add savings first. Everything gets filtered through the lens of real opportunity cost. And here's what surprises most drivers once they start thinking this way. You realize you don't actually want half the things you thought you wanted. The newest truck, a reliable, paid-off unit covers the same miles. The biggest sleeper, a clean used one gets you home the same way. This isn't about becoming the guy who never reinvests in his equipment. It's about being intentional with every dollar instead of letting it slip away on things that don't actually move the needle. Look, $100,000 gross isn't going to make you rich overnight, but it will fundamentally change how you think about trucking, money, and what's actually possible in this industry. It's the difference between driving a job and building a business, between chasing loads and choosing loads, between surviving in this industry and actually winning at it. Start building toward that milestone today. Track your numbers. Know your cost per mile. Say no to the cheap freight. Protect your reserves. Because your future self, the one who owns his equipment, has options, and actually enjoys this industry, is counting on the decisions you make right now. Trust me, that version of you will thank you for it.